Give me 4 years to teach the children, and the seed I have sown will never be uprooted. The way to crush the bourgeoisie is to grind them between the millstones of taxation and inflation. The best way to destroy a capitalist system is to debauch the currency. The press should be not only a collective propagandist, but also a collective organizer of the masses. Our program necessarily includes the propaganda of atheism. The Romanov family had ruled Russia for over 3 centuries by the time Nicholas II ascended to the throne in 1894. Under their reign, Russia had developed into a vast empire that spanned Europe and Asia. Despite its expansive geography and rich cultural heritage, the empire was riddled with systemic inefficiencies and social strife. Nicholas was committed to maintaining the autocratic powers vested in the Tsar despite the shifting political and social landscapes of the early 20th century. His reign was characterized by a reluctance to embrace necessary reforms which could have alleviated mounting pressures from a rapidly changing society. As Europe moved forward during the Industrial Revolution, Russia began its own transformation at a more accelerated pace. This rapid industrialization brought about significant economic and social changes, including the proliferation of factory jobs that drew millions from the countryside into crowded cities. This urban migration created a new industrial proletariat alongside a burgeoning middle class, both increasingly conscious of their potential political power. Yet the benefits of industrialization were unevenly distributed, with the working and rural peasantry enduring harsh conditions. This disparity between the opulent lifestyles of the elite and the squalor faced by the workers and peasants fueled discontent and set the stage for revolutionary sentiments. The pivotal moment in the growing dissatisfaction with Tsar Nicholas's rule came with the tragedy of Bloody Sunday in 1905. On January 22nd, peaceful protesters led by Father Gregory Gapon marched to the Winter Palace in St. Petersburg to present a petition for better working conditions, more personal freedom, and the establishment of a popular assembly. The response was brutal. Imperial guards opened fire on the unarmed crowd, resulting in the deaths and injuries of hundreds. This massacre profoundly shocked the nation and shattered the Tsar's image as a paternal figure to his people. The incident ignited widespread strikes and uprisings across the empire, marking the beginning of the 1905 revolution. In response to this unrest, Nicholas was compelled to concede to some reforms, notably the creation of a state Duma, an elected legislative body intended to placate demands for more democracy. However, the Tsar's subsequent actions to curtail these reforms and limit the Duma's power only deepened public frustration and set the stage for further revolutionary activity. This period also witnessed the coalescence of various political movements, including the Bolsheviks, who gained significant traction by advocating for a radical restructuring of society based on socialist principles. After his brother, Alexander Ulyanov, was executed in 1887 for participating in a plot to assassinate then-Tsar Alexander III, Vladimir Lenin was radicalized and deeply committed to revolutionary change. He became actively involved with Marxist groups, and by the 1890s, Lenin was a prominent figure in revolutionary circles. In 1895, after founding the Union of Struggle for the Emancipation of the Working Class, Lenin was arrested and spent over a year in detention before being exiled to Siberia. After serving a 3-year term in Siberia, he chose to leave Russia to avoid further arrest and to continue his work with other Russian Marxists who were also in exile. Lenin spent most of the next 17 years skulking in Western Europe. Lenin sharpened his ideologically extremist views, concocting strategies that would later unleash terror on an unprecedented scale in Russia. He engaged deeply with Marxist theory, actively plotting, engaging in extensive political maneuvering that would lay the groundwork for a brutal takeover of Russia. His works expanded on Marxist theory, for Lenin's approach was unique to conditions of Russia, advocating for a vanguard party to lead the proletariat revolution. Lenin's time in exile was not just a period of theoretical development, but also of significant political networking. He participated in multiple international socialist conferences and actively involved himself in the factional disputes within the Russian Social Democratic Labor Party. As Lenin nurtured his revolutionary strategies in exile, Russia itself was transforming under the strains of World War I and the inherent weaknesses of the Tsarist regime. The war drained resources, escalated national discontent, and led to severe shortages and high casualties, which eroded public and military morale. Meanwhile, Tsar Nicholas made the decision to take direct command of the army in 1915, and this only deepened the crisis, as his lack of military acumen became evident with each passing defeat, diminishing his reputation and that of the monarchy. Simultaneously, the socio-economic conditions within Russia grew increasingly dire. The war exacerbated food shortages, fueled inflation, and strained the urban workforce, which faced harsh working conditions. Discontent was not limited to the working class. Peasants, who constituted the majority of the Russian population, were desperate for land reform, as the promise of redistribution remained unfulfilled. These tumultuous conditions were ripe for exploitation by a determined revolutionary movement. The February Revolution of 1917, initially sparked by strikes and bread riots in Petrograd, led to the abdication of Nicholas II and the establishment of the provisional government. However, this new government, dominated by liberal and moderate socialists, continued the war effort and was hesitant to enact deep structural reforms, leaving the door open for more radical solutions proposed by figures like Lenin. Amidst this turmoil, the Bolsheviks, led by Vladimir Lenin, saw an opportunity to seize power. Lenin returned from exile in April 1917 and pushed for a second revolution, this time under Bolshevik leadership. The Bolsheviks promised an end to the war, land to the peasants, and power to the Soviets, which resonated with the war-weary and disillusioned masses. On the night of October 24, 1917, bolstered by the Red Guards and sympathetic military units, the Bolsheviks launched a coup against the provisional government. The attack was strategically centered in Petrograd, which is now St. Petersburg, where they captured significant locations such as the Winter Palace, which was then the seat of the provisional government. This put the Bolsheviks in control of the Russian capital and marked a significant turning point in Russian history. Lenin's early ideologies and methods reveal a complex landscape of revolutionary intent and harsh realities. Lenin's dogmatic fixation on Marxist doctrines, especially the dictatorship of the proletariat, revealed his thirst for absolute power, advocating for a brutal overthrow of the existing societal structures with no concern for the ensuing chaos. This ideology underpinned policies such as the nationalization of all industries and the confiscation of land from the nobility and wealthy landowners shortly after taking power. While these actions aimed to dismantle the structures of the old regime and redistribute wealth among the proletariat and peasantry, they often had predictable and disastrous outcomes. The immediate impact of Lenin's policies on the populace was catastrophic and inhumane. The forceful requisitioning of grain to feed urban populations led to widespread famine across the Russian countryside. This period, known as War Communism, saw the Bolsheviks seizing agricultural produce to support the Red Army and urban workers, leaving rural peasants in dire straits. The breakdown of traditional agricultural practices and the alienation of the peasantry exacerbated the food crisis and heightened social tensions. Moreover, the rapid nationalization of industries and the attempt to establish state control over the economy resulted in significant disruptions. Many factories, now managed by workers' committees with little to no experience in administration or management, saw declines in productivity and efficiency. The lack of skilled management and the chaos of the ongoing civil war further hindered industrial output, contributing to economic instability and the hardships faced by an already war-weary populace. The societal impacts of these policies was equally severe. The suppression of dissent, a method Lenin deemed necessary to protect the revolution, led to the creation of the Cheka, the Bolshevik secret police, which carried out widespread repression through arrests, executions, and the establishment of concentration camps for class enemies. This environment of fear and repression became known as the Red Terror. It stifled free expression, curbed any opposition to Bolshevik control, and cast a long shadow over Soviet society. Faced with the disastrous fallout of his own draconian policies, Lenin was forced to backtrack and introduce the new economic policy in 1921. The NEP was a desperate attempt to stave off total economic collapse and represented a significant shift, allowing for a limited reintroduction of private ownership and capitalist practices within the predominantly socialist economy. This policy was aimed at reviving the crippled economy by encouraging small-scale private enterprises and reducing grain requisitions in favor of a tax, thereby incentivizing peasants to increase agricultural production. The Bolshevik Revolution, while ending Russia's involvement in World War I and establishing the framework for the Soviet Union, set in motion a regime marked by its harsh repression and extensive human cost. Under Vladimir Lenin, the seeds of a new authoritarian rule were sown, as his policies led to the deaths of 5 to 9 million people through famine, warfare, and government repression. This tragic toll was but a prelude to what would follow under his successor. Joseph Stalin, ascending to power after Lenin, would not only continue these harsh methods, but expand them to unprecedented levels. The ominous shadows cast by Lenin's regime grew only darker as Stalin took the reins, ushering in an era where the scale of suffering and death would reach staggering new heights, profoundly shaping the future of the Soviet Union and echoing ominously through history. Lenin's legacy, far from being a mere historical footnote, serves as a stark warning against the dangers of centralized Marxist power and radical ideological pursuits which continue to resonate in current political dialogues. Thank you for watching this episode of Tyrants and Tyranny. These stories, while difficult, are crucial. They remind us of the vigilance needed to protect our societies from falling into the hands of tyranny again. If this content resonates with you, or you feel it's important that these narratives are shared and remembered, consider supporting this channel through Patreon. Your support not only helps keep this channel alive, but also contributes to a broader understanding and awareness of historical truths. We're in this together, and it's by supporting one another that we ensure the past does not repeat itself. Stay informed, stay connected, and most importantly, take care of yourselves.